ponder first before reacting. And one of the many ponderings that I've had recently, that's what happens when I get more time, when reviewing a piece on Lilith, who was one of the several versions of Adam's wife and not Eve, during the several versions of Adam and Eve in consecutive civilizations that we've had here on this planet. And we have covered the word magic several times on our shows, and how they like to change names, misinterpret words, and change the vowels. Now, one thing that intrigued me, and this is the first part of 4, about the current civilization is surrounding the languages. Now, at some point in time, it appears we all had a fairly common language, until the Lord objected to us all speaking together and came down and changed all the languages. That's in their scriptures, not mine. Now, the Lord of the Bible, we have become to understand, is the reptile king called Anu, head of the Anunnaki group here that spawned Enki, Enlil, Inanna, Marduk, Set, and many others many of you will be familiar with. This group also spawned the Hebrew religion and peoples in some cases. And that religion then splintered off into many divide and conquer categories like Christian, Torah, Islam, Hindu, Buddhism, etc. But it also spawned the anti-human book that appears to precede all others, called the Talmud. So upon analysing the languages, I came across an interesting discovery of how many European languages all have similar words and descriptions, and yet particularly 2 specific languages didn't. Now, it's said if you learn some Latin, you will be able to grasp French, German, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and also English. And these languages are the new version of the ancient common languages spoken by the Aryans, Rus, Nordic, and Slavic, all of which is congruent with what was known as the white race. Now, there is a few offsprings of that, the likes of the Welsh, the Irish, and the Basque, who are connected to the Celtic and Druid cultures by and large. But there are 2 regions on this planet that stands out different from the rest of the languages, many of which are intertwined with each other. Those 2 are Asian and what is described today as Jewish, or the Hebrew language. So why are they different? Because both speak in symbols is why. Chinese is all symbols, and they write right to left and often down, unlike other languages that write left to right and across. Now, no one asks or defines, where did these languages come from? And most assume it was Earth-based. But has the question been asked or addressed? Did it come from outside of this planet? Have we heard before about writing in symbols, and if so, where? Well, the answer is yes. The EBE, extraterrestrial biological entity in the Aztec, New Mexico crash, in his transcript mentioned that they don't write like us but speak in symbols. And each symbol has several different meanings or characteristics that describes things in greater detail by just one symbol. The Hebrew language is the same, and some Arabic as well. Symbols, and yet curiously and also indicative, without vowels. Hence the term Yahweh is spelt YHWH. Could it be the case that the Hebrew language removed the vowels so that the vow to their God is in single form? It's in the word vow and El. El means God. And there was not just one vowel, and so that then represents several gods. When whoever created their religion and language wanted them to follow only one God, not several. Now that God has several names, and yet the Jewish religion forbids any saying the real name, and uses other modes to describe their God. And that in and of itself brings up trust and doubt issues for any balanced researcher. Is why are they not allowing their people to call the name of their God? Could it be their God is not who they all thought it was, and they don't wish for the people to find out? So these Chinese symbol language was supported by the dragons, serpents, and along with India and the Naga, which is also the serpent race. And then you tie it in with the Lord sending fiery serpents to harm and in some cases kill the Hebrewic people with Moses, and then perhaps a picture emerges. Maybe the Asian North and South, along with the Hebrew Jewish race known as the sub-grey race that came out of India, not the Middle East, as DNA proves otherwise, were all not originally from this planet to begin with. Something to ponder on. The second thing I wish to get people to ponder on, and in support of the language piece pondering, is genetics. Why are all humans so different? Let's look at the Asian peoples again, shall we? Why are their eyes more closed or slanted? What could have caused that genetic default in those peoples? And by default I mean it is something that exists or happens if you do not change it intentionally by performing an action. So let's start off with a fact before going deeper, shall we? The idea that all humans came out of Africa theory is a total conspiracy theory. It's not marred in any facts or even basis of logic. Next, not all humans came from another conspiracy theory stated in the Bible, that it all started with Adam and Lilith, or Eve. So why do I not believe either of those recognized facts and considered to be the truth? 1. It is not possible for all humans to originate out of Africa, who were jet black, to then become yellow, red, or white, It is a completely different genetic makeup. 2. If we started off with just 2 people, A, it means we were all born of incest, and B, we would all have the same or similar DNA and genetics. And this is not the case of either DNA or genetics. So back to the Asian people and their eyes. How did it happen? Well, this is what I'm proposing today, and people are free to discount it or not, but ponder on it first. Take the country tribalism and racism out of it. This is a genetic and DNA information only. The Asian eyes are that way because they did not originate originally from this planet. Whatever planet they came from, their sun, or in most cases suns, most systems have 2 or 3. We have 3 but can't see the other 2. Their sun or suns was much closer, or in combination of the 2 or 3 suns much brighter, and so why their eyes are made that way. It's called adaptation. It is not possible for the black African to become yellow and change their eyes as have the Asian people model have done. If any other colour or race looks up at the sun, particularly midday to early afternoon, what is the first thing that we all do? We squint our eyes, which then makes us look like Asians. Why are Africans black? Because they live in the zone of the equator that gets the frequencies from both poles and changes their skin tone to that colour is why. Now, there is a brown race, which means their zone is slightly further north or slightly further south of the equator, hence the lighter skin tone. This browning becomes lighter again as you go further north, in what is known as the Mediterranean look. Go further north and white as it gets less sunlight. Now the white race further north gained other benefits as they are closer to the source energies and frequencies coming either from the pole or the continent of the area, which enhances abilities and also intelligence levels. And this allowed in the past for those peoples to be much higher evolved, soul-developed beings than we have now from any colour or race. And I believe the colours are based on the composition of suns, or how many suns, and also the distance of the suns in relation to their homeworld planet. And for a better explanation of why so many colours and differences in genetics. Now on to part 3 of this Pondering Pieces. We had a red race here at one point. And no, not Native American red, but tomato red. That race of humans came from the Pleiades constellation. And I have a theory on that to explain some other anomalies on this planet. Now we have the case of the strange red-haired people in mainly 3 regions of this planet, although I suspect one region was responsible for another, and that is Ireland, Egypt and Peru, with elements of the Basque thrown in. But if the story of Ireland, the land of the Pharaohs, is true, then perhaps that explains the Basque region as perhaps being a halfway point from Ireland to Egypt. The mummies unearthed from the Valley of the Kings and other regions, there was no mummies ever in the pyramids, and that is a fact, because that is his story, authorities trying to rewrite his story to suit and also cover up off-world connections throughout that whole region. But those mummies all had red hair. So where did the red hair come from? Where did the red pigment in some white peoples from, particularly in the UK, Ireland, Scotland, England, and parts of Scandinavia come from? My theory is the females were mating with the red-skinned Pleiadian humans in the past, and the Pleiadians' genetics are interwoven with the white race genetics and produce this red hair and skin pigment colour. Could it also be why the obsession with the predominantly white alt media participants with the obsession of all things Pleiadian be interlinked via genetic memory from long in the past? Now also, it may not have been just mating, but genetic interference, of which I will reveal in greater detail in an up-and-coming blockbuster show. It will be a blockbuster. Now, my own knowledge, which is and can be difficult to prove outside of trusting, is this. The yellow, red and black race were seeded here from other planets, a number of which were refugees from galactic-wide wars, and after many planets and or solar systems were destroyed, and those 3 colours or races were brought here. Other evidence suggests those 3 were placed in zones here that were conducive to their home planet's climate and solar distances. Other evidence, which is fairly substantial and has been cross-referenced many times, is those 3 races were told to not mix sexually or for procreation with others due to genetic differences, it was said. And this is nothing to do with racism and purely based on genetic differences. This, I am told, and is in part supported by some archaeologists and their scientific testing, took place around 40,000 years ago. Now, the final piece of knowledge is that some were seeded here to destroy the race of human that was here long before all the others, the white race. And archaeological evidence, much of which is hidden under the banner of Darwinism, does support that fact. The voodoo, being the most prominent course of action to subvert the native populace, which is why and how the sub-grey race was created. Why they spread across the earth and infected all tribal groups, which then brought in ritual sacrifices that the jet black race of India was doing in the Garden of Eden, and then spread out across the world through many colours, including the whites, doing Celtic, Druidic and Wiccan or other witchcraft practices. The evidence that is supportive of this is in the Vedic Rus texts, and no, they're not Indian. The question is, did another race use and seed the black race with the voodoo? Or is it a natural part of the genetic makeup to then use against the other peoples by seeding their genetics? Further support and information regarding that is in the line from the Zionist sub-grey race person known as Israel Cohen, who said this: "We will make the Negro rise in popularity, and with this prestige, the Negro will be able to intermarry with the whites and begin a process that will deliver America to our cause." Clearly from this, he is stating that blacks somehow marrying the whites will somehow weaken the whites. And so how is that possible? Via genetics is the only answer. And what that statement also proves is the Zionist sub-grey race, spawned and cajoled by the Anunnaki reptile group, is intent on only one thing: bringing down the white race. And the question is, why? From Russia with Love 1 and 2 revealed the why and the how. Now, at the time of that speech in 1912, the whites represented over 90% plus of Americans. Which kind of downplays the theory that most of the originals here were all the black slaves that were brought here, when actually it was the European and Irish slaves. Not saying there wasn't any black slaves, there was, but it was all colours, not just one. That 90+% now is down to around 60%. The global demographics had the white race at 30+% then as well, and it's now down to 9% and falling fast. Less than 3/4 of 1 billion. This is a long-standing galactic and universe-wide war that the dark forces have hunted down the white race, both in terms of the colour and the group, who are not all white, and used various other humans and non-humans to destroy the white race, who are the arch enemy of the dark forces. And further evidence of such will appear in a later show. What I'm asking people is to not react to this piece in defence of your own colour. Please ponder long and hard of the implications of this and how we all go forward together. Perhaps the biggest question that arises from this is, which human am I? Have we defined it? Do we know who, what, when, or where we came from? It is an assumption we are all the same. And yes, we are all the same in terms of the most popular vessel throughout this universe, which is the humanoid vessel. But we are not all the same humans in relation to this planet. Remember the EBE when asked about, are the children on the craft in cryogenic status human? And the reply was, it depends on what your definition of human is. Altogether. Happy pondering on that. It's been a long time coming, that piece.